delighted to be in your living rooms this evening. Welcome to my kitchen. Zoom has pluses in that these are our way of getting together and looking at various different things, but tonight a little bit of gardening and a little bit of thinking ahead to hopefully being out there in the summer and enjoying some good weather. Now I know it's a bit nippy there this evening, but we will be getting some nice weather next week. Temperatures up to around 15, which will be brilliant for what I'm going to be showing you today or this evening. A couple of things about these bowls that I have here. They're alpine bowls, and I use them for two reasons. One, they're very light. They're made of kind of a heavy duty plastic, and they have drainage holes in the bottom. And I use them to create a lot of the different planters that are different kind of schemes that I do. They're light, they're easy to move around, and they look really nice on patio tables. So they're up off the ground where hopefully the slugs can't get at them. So first things first, compost is probably one of the most important things, that you can do yourself in your garden by producing your own compost. It's not enough just to lash in a whole load of grass clippings into a compost bay. You have to have layers of stuff. So you have to have some grass clippings, some herbaceous stuff that maybe you've cut back, some hedging maybe you've cut back, and certainly stuff from the kitchen, obviously not cooked food, but certainly eggshells, banana skins, that sort of thing. No potato peels, because obviously you're going to get some spuds that you didn't really want in your compost bay. So if you have your own compost, that's brilliant. If you don't, you can buy one. But you need to add in, when a bought compost will only have some nutrients to get you through the first few, maybe 8 weeks. And then you have to add in your own kind of food for the plants that you're going to put in. I use it's a slow release fertilizer. So I'll just show it to you there, exhibit 1. So what it does is it releases, every time it rains or you water, it releases the nutrients into the planter for the plants to uptake. So the plants will then be fed by what the nutrients that you've provided. I just use 1 or 2 scoops. This planter is about 18 inches wide in old money, and I just use 2 scoops. The scooper comes with it, and you just add them in. Now, garlic and cinnamon stick to remind me to tell you about homemade remedies for things like I suppose fungal diseases that maybe your plants will get over the summer. And that happens because there's poor air circulating around your plants, perhaps, especially with roses and stuff like that. Poor air circulation and badly pruned roses allow fungal diseases to get in, but also pests to attack when the fungal diseases have attacked your roses. So you have to kind of think on 2 kind of levels. Am I going to put on some chemical, or am I going to make up my own little homemade remedy? Well, I'm all for the homemade remedy bit. A, it doesn't cost you a huge amount of money, and B, it's obviously safer for the environment. And just let me get my cloves of garlic. So I have here 2 cloves of garlic, and I'm going to squash them a little bit. And I'm going to use this bottle now. You need 2 of these bottles, or just a litre bottle, fill it with water, put your 2 cloves of garlic in after they've been squashed, fill it up with water, and leave it to settle and take up the smell of the garlic for a couple of days, okay? When you go to use it, you're going to decant 100 ml into a litre bottle. This is a little mister sprayer. So 100 ml, and then you fill with water, and you squirt in pretty ordinary washing up liquid, just a little 1 squirt of washing up liquid. Give it a shake. And what you do then is you spray the leaves of your roses to protect them against the aphids. Aphids come along, they smell the roses, the leaves, and they infest the actual leaves of the rose. And what they do is they leave a little residue of, it's almost like spit if you like, into the leaf, and that kind of distorts the leaf. So if you're on it with something like this, your garlic wash, it's a very easy kind of thing to make up and wonderful instead of using chemical. The second is for a fungal problem that you may have with different plants. And all it is 2 cinnamon sticks that you buy in your supermarket. Put it, again, same thing again, a litre of water, put 2 into the litre of water and let it permeate with the cinnamon, and use that as a spray for a fungal disease. Now you can use it for damping off. You get a thing called damping off when you sow seeds too close together. So if you use the spray on the top of the surface of the compost, it'll help with that, okay? Cinnamon stick. So cinnamon stick and garlic, not only useful in the kitchen, but also in gardening, okay? So back to our little bowl here that we're going to create. I'm all for for not buying a load of plastic bags full of salad, if you like, in the supermarkets. Why? Because invariably they end up in the back of the fridge. And they're out of date before you know it, and you're wasting it. And again, well, you could put it into the compost heap, and that'd be a good one. But to save yourself a few bob and a few, just to create something interesting for your patio, I'm just going to start this up. This is all edible. Everything I'm putting in here is edible. So let's have a look first at peas. Now, this is really posh salad, if you like. So you can do it yourself, as in you can buy a packet of seeds, pea seeds or peas, and you can sow them into the compost very easily. But I want this to, I obviously don't have 2.5 weeks for them to germinate and then become this size. So we're going to cheat a little bit and just put them into here to show you what this is going to be looking like. Now, the whole idea is that you harvest. If you don't harvest, they just run to seed. That's their job in life. Plants want to run to seed. So I'm just going to make sure that every time, and I'll tell you loads over the course of this, the more you harvest, the more you get. There's a little pea, if you like, as in that's what it looked like and that's what it grew to. So if we harvest the leaves constantly and use them in a salad, you will pretty much have a nice ongoing salad bowl for the whole summer. Okay, so let's just take these out. Here's one I prepared earlier, as in I teased them out a little bit because sometimes they're hard to get out of the packaging and they make a whole lot of noise, drives everybody mad. So just put them into your compost. Now, the trick with compost is the plant that you're putting into the compost has to be as moist as the compost. If it isn't, and you put your plant into a dry compost, the moisture is sucked out immediately. So the plant is nearly dying before it even gets started. So think about that. Everything has to be right in the right environment in order to get going. So all my little peas in there. In the center, I've leaving a little bit of a room for, I'll show you the finished article in a little while. I'm going to put in some herbs. If I can find my herby derbies. Okay, so I've chives. Only put in what you like. You know, if you like chives and you like flat leaf parsley and you like coriander is a difficult one, just to say, because it tends to bolt quite quickly. So it runs to seed. So what you're going to have to do with coriander is you're going to buy one called Vietnamese coriander. It's like a shrub and you harvest the leaves of it. So it's a bigger affair. So you might put it in a different pot. Wonderful plant in that mine was in leaf, I think up until November, and we cut it back there a while ago. So I'm hoping it's already sprouting from the base. So it's not like your ordinary coriander that you would see in a supermarket or that you can grow yourself. It's a very robust, almost like a woody shrub, if you like, really, but the scent of the leaves is amazing. So look out for that one, Vietnamese coriander, gorgeous. If you're using the ordinary coriander, you're going to sow in succession. So you're going to sow a few seeds, you could do it into this compost, a few seeds this week, the week after that. So you're harvesting all the time, but you're sowing succession seeds for coriander. Otherwise, it just tends to bolt really quickly. So I've got chives, I've got marjoram, I've got parsley, I've flat leaf parsley. And now I'm going to go in with my little, let me see, put in some lettuce. Now, the whole idea of this is that you go out every day. So you're having maybe something nice, bit of fish, a bit of chicken or something like that, and you're harvesting your leaves for your salad every day. So you're not wasting, there's no waste here. You're only harvesting what you need for lunch or dinner, and then you are going back to it maybe for the herbs. You could put in a bit of rosemary for the spring lamb, something like that, really nice. Tarragon would be a great one. Put it in the center, it gets a little bit bigger. French tarragon is wonderful scent and wonderful with chicken. Cuts through you're making a cream sauce for chicken, really nice. All I'm talking about is food because I haven't had any dinner yet. So let's put in all of those. And so you're building up a really nice kind of look to your planter. Now, this is a nice little present. You're thinking of an idea for somebody was been very good to you over the year for Easter or something like that, and you want to give them a little present, something like this would be quite nice. The bowls that I use are from the Garden House in Malahide. I haven't seen them anywhere else, to be honest. But they are so light and easily, transportable and easy to move around, and nice little things. You could just use them as an alpine bowl if you want. I'm using them for the salad bowl, and then I'm going to be using it for a planter that's going to get you from now through the summer, as long as you deadhead. Deadhead is a very simple kind of trick. Just take the old flower head off, right down to the base, so that allows new flowers to grow. One of the questions, a couple of questions came in before this evening's presentation. Just one of them was on clematis. Now, clematis are a bit like a 2-year-old. They like a lot of different things, and they don't like a lot of stuff, and they're mown and grown. And clematis is a bit like that. They like their feet in the shade and their heads in the sun, which is quite hard to achieve when you think about it. So what you're looking for is an area in the garden that it can creep up a wall and be in the sunshine, but the base of it is shaded. Whether you have to plant around it to give it that bit of shade, or some stone, that sort of thing, just to give it the shade. The other thing with clematis is, if you don't plant deeply enough, as in you leave too much, you plant it to the original soil mark that it came in the pot in, it can get something called clematis wilt, which means 1 minute you have it and the next minute it's just wilted and died off. But if you've planted deeply in that you've covered the first couple of leaves that are above the surface of the pot, that will ensure, hopefully, that it'll regenerate. If you do lose it to wilt, it'll regenerate from under the ground again and come back. There's 3 kind of different types of clematis that flower at different times. You have Montana, then I have one called Pearl de Jour, Nellie Moser. The President is the latest one. So with the likes of Montana, you prune back after it finishes flowering. The second group, you are kind of, you're cutting back some of the stems, maybe to allow some go over a pergola or something like that, would be taller. And the third lot, you can cut maybe to a foot off the ground, just to give them that bit of vigor that they need to really get off to a good start, and they flower much later. Okay, so if it's Montana or early ones, cut back after flowering. That also applies to shrubs that flower. If you think about forsythia, if it flowers from November to June, you cut it back after flowering. And that ensures that it takes all the time, after you've finished cutting it back, it takes all that year to grow new wood to flower next year. So if it flowers between November and June, cut it back after flowering. Kind of simple, isn't it? Okay, so we've got our few letters in there. I want to use, this is a little kind of spicy mix. Different kind of lettuce. Now you can do your own. You can sow the seed in here very easily. I'm going to find it difficult to get some seed. I was noticing in my local garden centre that they're nearly all gone. Now they will reorder, but things are coming in a little bit slower. So if you're after a particular, type of seed, or that you're interested in growing some veg, get them now. Get them and have them ready to rock and roll. Still a bit early. We in Ireland think, that we're living in the Mediterranean, and we rush out and we sow a load of seed a little bit too early. So look, we get a good back end to the summer, so there's no difficulty in waiting. And then at least then you can put them outside a lot quicker. What happens at the moment is we're in for a little bit of a cold spell tonight. You might have some seed, and you've gone, way over the top, sowing a whole load of seed, and now you don't have anywhere to put it because you're running out of space. The kitchen is full of them, or your glass house is full of them. So just think about that. Just leave another few weeks, a couple of weeks, and then you can start. Obviously, your tomatoes would have been sown and kind of on the go at this stage. But the likes of the annuals, some of the summer bedding, that sort of thing, petunias and all the rest of it, you can just leave it a little bit longer, okay? As I said, next week we have to get a few nice days, which would be marvellous. Just need that little bit of sunshine to pick us up a bit, with the best will in the world, where we are coming to the end of our tethers with this one, but, a bit longer, we'll get there, don't worry. Okay, so if this was a gift that I was giving to somebody, I'll be inclined to make it a little bit more interesting for them. So nothing as beautiful as a few violas. Look at that, little lilac violas. Now you can use any colour you like, but they're edible. The little flowers are edible. So when you are watering this, make sure, I mean, to be honest with you, we all should be using water butts. That's the truth of it. And collecting as much rainwater as we can, especially for your camellias, your rhododendrons, your azaleas, stuff like that. Because people say to me, oh, I'm after doing everything you've asked me to do with the camellia and it's still looking not very fantastic. You know, it's still looking a little bit anemic. And that's because iron is locked out to it if it's in the wrong soil. So if you have a camellia and you have it in, we have a very limey soil here in that it's nearly 7.89, and camellias are looking for more of a 6 into the acid. If you provide the right compost, as in the ericaceous compost, and then you go and use your water from your tap, which is full of lime, it's not going to like it. So you have to give it your water from a water butt. So if you're growing camellias, rhododendrons, azaleas, and you're not lucky enough to have acid soil that they love, then you're going to have to provide the things that they need to look as well as they should. Okay, there's nothing worse to see than seeing a camellia struggling and looking really worse for wear. And it's like anemia. I always say to people, if the leaves are a pale green and then the veins are dark, it's like anemia. It's like iron is locked out. So you have to do a couple of things. You can get a sequestered iron and give your plant what it needs, or you can grow it in a pot with ericaceous compost, top up every year and make sure you're feeding it correctly. Usually people, a little bit of a mistake that can be made with camellias is that you feed them at the wrong time. So when they finish flowering, you can start your feeding regime with those kind of plants. When they finish flowering, introduce them to a really nice food that has all the requirements they have or they need, a balanced fertilizer, and stop feeding in July. End of July, stop feeding. Make sure they're watered well over the summer and the winter. They still need moisture in the winter because when they detect the slightest change in temperature, they're getting ready to flower. This time of year, glorious, you see them all over the place, absolutely glorious. And if you're lucky enough to have an acid soil, you can even grow a hedge of camellias. What could be more welcoming? Absolutely gorgeous. So a few more lettuce. And I will then, my trusty assistant, my husband, who's sitting there going, he's the technical whiz kid here tonight, because I'm not. I must have to break in that one. I'm just going to tease these out. When you're teasing anything out of a pot or a 6-cell tray like this, if you go from the bottom, then you're not disturbing the roots too much. Okay, and pull that one out. And again, now it looks like I'm putting a whole load in here, and I am, because I want to prove to you that within 14 days, this is going to look absolutely gorgeous. And you can go out there and harvest every day for your lunch, your dinner, and give it maybe something similar as a present to somebody that has been good to you. Or that instead of an Easter egg, you know what I mean? Good idea. How many Easter eggs can a person eat? Well, one anyway. Safely say that. Now, that in there. And again, I'm just going to go with a few more violas. So I put into this mix, as in into the compost, my herbs, my pea shoots. So you can harvest the pea shoots. The more you harvest, the more you get. If you don't harvest, they just go to seed. So the trick is to go out there and harvest. You don't have to harvest the violas too much, as in they'll be, you know, the flowers will be there. You can use the flowers in a salad, or you can use them to decorate an Easter cake or something like that. Another way they do that thing where they frost, it's real American, they frost the flowers so they look gorgeous and they're kind of like sugary, really nice. But in a salad, you just pick the flowers and put them into the salad. Just put that over there. I gave my husband Christopher one of the pea shoots to taste there the other day. He wasn't overly sure, but actually they're quite sweet. You know, they are sweet. So they're a nice kind of combination. You could put in a spicy mix of a salad into this, which is quite nice, or rocket. Oh, rocket would be gorgeous. So let me just put a few more in. One of the other questions that I was sent in was to do with how do you feed, you know, heavily planted up borders with perennials and maybe shrubs and things. One of the best products I've come across in recent times, if you don't have manure, you've no access to getting well-rotted manure, and well-rotted manure doesn't have a smell because it's 5 years old, or it should be, before you put it anywhere near your borders. I don't know if you've heard of a product called Soil Renew. I've no vested interest in any of these products, except that I've tried it and it's really good. It's the equivalent of putting a ton of manure on your borders, except it comes in a bucket. It's a bit like chicken manure, and you scatter it in and you can just leave it on the top. It's also good for moss on a lawn. Scatter it in, leave it on the top, and as it leaches into the soil, it just gives it a huge boost. But chicken manure is good, or the slow release fertilizer that I just showed you there in the box, because it has all the nutrients that are required by your plants: nitrogen, a bit of potassium, and a bit of phosphorus. So it has it all, which is great news for the plants. And that particular feed that I use, the slow release fertilizer, is a 6-month feed. So if you're putting it on for the summer, it'll do you for now, it'll do you for the whole summer. Then you can give a little bit of a boost towards the end of the summer if you've got dahlias or anything like that, because some plants are heavy feeders. You know, they require a bit more in the way of food than other plants. So if you're thinking heavy feeders would be sweet pea, would be peony roses, obviously, dahlias, things that go on and on to flower for you, need that extra bit of food. So a tomato food would be excellent, you know, if you're having a significant kind of birthday or party. Not that you're having too many parties. You can add in your tomato food, and that can give your plants a really good boost, because it's for flowering and fruit. So, you know, that's the trick. Give it a nice little injection of food, and that'll really kind of set them off flowering. One of the things I'm constantly asked about is pruning. I'm pruning roses, and it seems to be a kind of a bit of a worry for people who are only starting out. I'm sure many of you are really good gardeners, and, you know, I'm only in the halfpenny place in comparison to some of you, but roses seem to present problems to people in terms of pruning. And one of the, you know, things that they say about roses is let your worst enemy at them, as in they won't be afraid to hack them back. So roses need to be, I suppose, edited. They need to be pruned out to a shape to give good air circulation and allow lots of sunshine in order to flower really well. If that doesn't happen, you're off, you know, on a bad start. So when you're pruning a rose, and I'll do one in a minute, or show you at least what I'm talking about, it's to create an outward, or a shape like, I suppose, like a wine glass or a goblet kind of shape. And you're pruning to an outward facing bud. When you think about it, if the sap is rising and it's coming up toward up the stem, and it hits where you've pruned, and you've pruned to an inward facing bud, all the extension growth that it makes when the sap comes up is going to go in. But if you prune to an outward facing bud on this side, the extension growth will go out. Makes sense, doesn't it? So you have to kind of be aware of, now, not for 1 minute suggestion that you look at or put your hand near a Rosa rugosa, which will take the hand off you. But just have a look for a little bud or a little protruding side bud there, and prune just ahead of that, and on the outward side of the stem, and the extension growth as the sap rises will go out and produce lovely flowers out there, not in here where you can't see them. All right. So my trusty assistant is going to come over here in a minute. So that's kind of the start of our salad bowl. So you've got your different herbs, your pea shoots, your different lettuces, and your violas to make it absolutely gorgeous. If you're giving it as a gift, or indeed you want to have it yourself, the more you harvest, the more you're going to get. So I'm just going to swap these over. Thank you very much. Now, the one I'm going to show you, I made, or I put together 10 days ago. Okay, so that's to show you the difference. Look at that. Now, that would be very nice, adorning any table or patio table in your garden. And I have, look how much the flat leaf parsley has grown. So harvest all of them. So you're just nipping back. Maybe you can have a little scissors, something like that. the more you take, the more you get. There's chives in the middle. So you have everything there that you could possibly want in a salad, and they're looking really healthy. You water, obviously, and obviously lettuce takes an awful lot of water, so make sure you're on it with the watering or they'll dry out and you'll end up with not a very good looking salad bowl, a mediocre looking salad bowl. So think on about what you see. I put in the pea shoots, but maybe you're not interested in pea shoots. They're quite sweet, they're nice. Put in rocket if that's your thing. Okay, just take off a few more. Oh, the scent is lovely. And thyme, oh, I love thyme. Gorgeous in it. So there's everything there that you could possibly want in terms of a herb: thyme, parsley, chives. I've got oregano. I'm obviously not going to put the Vietnamese coriander in there. I've got a bit of rosemary there, gorgeous, and the scent of rosemary is lovely. So everything there is edible, and everything there needs to be nipped back in order for it to keep from going to seed. Okay, so just take that. And a beautiful combination, gorgeous scent of those. Now I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about, my trusty assistant might take this one off me again. So just another little look at that. Very easy to do, isn't it? The bowls are, I think, €39, around about that. So very easy to manageable in order to lift. Christopher, I just have that one there. Thank you. He's working overtime tonight. Thank you very much. Yeah. Marvelous. So this one I'm going to be doing I suppose something to get you through the whole summer. Now, we're looking at a bit of cold weather. They're saying, maybe down to 1 or 0. So you might get a bit of grass frost. So if you make this up, put it in the evening, bring it out during the day, just bring it in and out just for a week or two until it actually, we get a consistent spell of decent weather. Where you don't have to wear your jacket, that kind of way. Because if you have to wear a jacket, your plants need a jacket as well, just to say. Just let me talk to you about roses then. So here's what I was talking about with the open shape. You see the open shape? And this stem here, so you have 2 really decent looking stems, and then you have one in the middle with growth going back into the center of the rose. So I would take that out. And let this one shoot out that way. So come back down to this little shoot here, which is outward facing, and that'll go out that way. This one it's going to cause problems with the air circulation in your plant. So make sure you do that. This is a rambling rose called Compassion. Really nice. Our climbing rose called Compassion. I'll show you the colour. Look at that. Isn't that lovely? Beautiful. So roses, if you don't prune on a regular basis, at least every couple of years, or in fact every year for shrub roses, floribundas and stuff like that, then you run the risk of it flowering up here somewhere. You don't have flower. You want flowers all over it. You really want to see the flowers, not be straining your neck to have a look up. It's a bit like Mahonia. When Mahonia gets old and it's kind of to the stage where it's all the flowers are up top, and you're craning your neck looking up. So you want to kind of prune it so that you can actually see the flowers lower down. So remember that, when you're looking at plants, you're actually in control of your garden. I know it's hard to believe. Some of us, especially when you see loads of weeds and stuff, like we cleaned out a whole herbaceous border of bindweed, which let me tell you is a difficult thing to try and get rid of. And it's coming in on seed and stuff like that, but it absolutely ruins borders. And people say, sure, it's flowering and it's quite nice. It's not quite nice when it starts strangling other plants and it's taken over, So with the likes of the weeds, you have to be kind of honest, especially with the herbaceous border where you're actually growing really nice stuff, that you want them to be the center of attention, not the bindweed or any other scutch grass or anything like that. So it's just maintenance in borders is a difficult one. So what I'm trying to do is edit it down enough that I have a big swathe of one type of plant and then another kind of swathe of another type of plant, and not bits of plants here and there, because I'm a bit of a magpie when it comes to plants. Quite like that one, come home with that one, put that in, or I'm propagating plants that I really like, and I end up with bits of this, that and the other. So now it's into blocks, like you would see in big formal gardens. If you go to Bodnant or indeed Farm Lee or any of those big gardens where you see really nice blocks of colour, big swathes of colour, that's what you're after. Even in a pot, you're kind of thinking about the color combinations. Otherwise, you end up, there's something not quite right about maybe the planter that you've made up, because there's a jarring color. So think about your color scheme when you're doing kind of pots of planters. Anyway, that's the rose. Okay, so remember your garlic wash for that fella. Garlic wash for your roses is excellent. But you have to be kind of on it from the beginning of the season. There's no point in rushing out with your garlic spray halfway through the year when all the damage is already done. If leaves fall to the ground and they have black spot on them, the spores will enter the top surface of the ground and just reinfect your rose for the next season. So just pick up the old debris, pick up any of the old leaves that may have had black spot on them, and just put them into a bin. Don't put them into your compost heap. So again, I'm just putting the equivalent of 2 scoops, and they're kind of small little scoops, like an egg cup of this slow release fertilizer, and it provides all the necessary nutrients that this planter is going to need for the summer. You can give it a little bit of a boost with tomato feed later on in the summer, just to really kind of get it really flowering beautifully. Okay, so in the center, you can decide what you want to put in. I'm doing it so that it's going to look full and gorgeous and voluptuous within 10 minutes. Okay, so obviously they're going to take a bit of time to get going. Now, the other thing about a planter is they'll only fill space that's available to them. They'll stay in their root ball if that's all you're going to give them. So unless it's something, like a formium that you're putting in that's going to take over the place. So I'm putting in a Libertia. There's a lovely, this is a Libertia with a white flower, beautiful white kind of flower that comes up in the summer. And then there's one called, it's the orange Libertia. Can't think of it, peregrines, I think. Beautiful in a west-facing location because it gets all that evening sun and it glows. It's really gorgeous. So that's my kind of bit of height, if you like, in the center. Now, say you don't want to put that in the center, but you have a few, you have some material from shrubs and stuff in the garden. If you stick in a bit of oasis, florist oasis, into the center of the pot, and stick in your, like I have here. I'll just show you. I'm not going to use this foliage because I'm going to use it. So florist oasis. You can stick it in the center and use this as your height. Not to go buying anything, and use that as your height. So I'm just going to put that back there. So that's my Libertia, and just gives me that kind of green foliage that I quite like for the center of a pot. Okay. Again. Now, so osteospermums. People have a thing about osteospermums, like daisies, isn't it nice? Or carnations, and they'd be saying, "Oh, they're very old-fashioned." Well, so what? Old-fashioned is nice. Old-fashioned has a scent. These days, things are bred to be fantastical and have no diseases and no this and no that and no the other at the cost of all the scent, So I'd rather have the bit of scent, thank you very much, than, and especially with roses, I don't mind a bit of black spot and a bit of this and a bit of that if it has a scent, because there's nothing more glorious. When you come into it, especially an older garden, when you come into an older garden, it has the most glorious scent, and you're thinking, and it takes a long time to get a rose to establish and be that, star that roses are meant to be in a garden, and the scent as you walk by, just beautiful. So I'm breaking a rule here. Generally in horticulture, it's odd numbers. Because this is a round bowl, I'm doing 4 of these osteospermums. Now I don't know if you can see that other color. It's kind of like a tangerine color there. So they have them in this tangerine color with a kind of a light pink center, and then they have them in this pink with a kind of a purpley center. They have them white. They're going to get all sorts of colors through the year. There will be a little bit of a shortage on some of the bedding plants, only because nurseries are catching up with the fact that the garden centres weren't open, so they're only catching up now with all of that. So I'm just going to move that around. My little twirly thing underneath helps enormously. So again, another osteospermum. So I'm putting in 4. You may well decide that 3 is enough for you, but I want this to look lovely by the end of this. So I'm just making sure. Now you don't have to tease out the roots, because they're just going to pretty much stay in their shape, but they will flower all summer. Your job, and the only job you have to do really, is to water, and because the feed is already in there, and it's to deadhead. So if you deadhead just the top flower, let me get one flower that's not going to make any difference to you. Okay, I'll do it with the Euryops. So there's your Euryops, and there's your flower. Okay, so say the flower has just gone over, it's kind of died off. If you just go like that and take off the top bit and leave the stem there, the plant is thinking to itself, well, I still have to push water and food up that stem. To what? Nothing. The flower is gone. So when you're taking or deadheading, go all the way down and take it out at the base, so that the plant doesn't have to do any work. All it has to do is open this next flower underneath. So your job is just to deadhead in a manner that will work for the plant, so the plant can then open the next flower. Very easy, isn't it? Okay, next one up. So as I said to you, I'm using 4, breaking a rule. Normally it's odd numbers in plants for planters. Just, I don't know why it looks better, but it does look better. So if you're doing a herbaceous border or a big border or something like that, if you put in 3 or 1 or 5, it'll work better for you. It'll look the part, look fuller, and then it kind of repeats the pattern through it. So what do we do now? So I've got, I put in a plant called Diacia last year, and it looks nothing at the moment, just like very nothing, but they flower and flower and flower and flower right up until the end of October. They owe you nothing, they actually come back, which is great. So I'm just going to put them in, and they're kind of going to give me my little bit of, I suppose, tumbling over effect over the side of the pot, nice and neat and tidy, and they're so kind of well behaved. It's nice to use well behaved plants, because they just do, you know, they kind of just do their thing, and they don't cause you any upset. Lovely with begonias, if you want to put in begonias. So the osteosperms are for full sun. They like sun, they like sunshine, they like, I mean, they do okay in a shaded area, but not as well, obviously, as full sun. If you're looking for something for a dappled shaded area, say you've got a planter, but you want to put it in a kind of an area that doesn't get full sun, go for begonias, busy lizzies, stuff like that. Really good in that instance. Now, another one of these fellas. So for Diacia, again, it's because I have a round pot that I'm using it for. I'll find oh, there's another one. And just in between the osteosperms, okay. And another one here. And that'll be, you know, really full and gorgeous in a very short space of time. What it does is it just fills out nicely. You're obviously going to water, so you're giving the plant. When you think about it, like things are grown hydroponically, things are grown in water. You don't even need soil for the most part these days. They're even growing underground. We saw an article in one of the gardening magazines about growing things in underground, you know, stations and stuff like that. They're using up space, you know, in terms of growing kind of stuff in different ways now. But hydroponics and growing things hydroponically has been around for a long time. And it just means that, you know, they're not using peat or compost or stuff like that, it's just water. So your job is to make sure that this gets watered enough in order for it to flower well. The food is already in there. Okay, so I'm going to use some pansies. So these are the bigger version of the violas. Viola is the kind of Latin name. So just put in these boys. I like purple, as you can tell from the last one as well. But you could use white. You could do a kind of a very soft. If say it was for a shaded area, you're using begonias and busy lizzies. Put in a couple of ferns. That'd be quite nice, or one fern in the centre. That'd be quite nice as a look. You know. I'm just going to put in a few more of these fellas. Hopefully ones with a little bit of a flower, so you can see the finished. And they're gorgeous. And like they're not that expensive for a 6-pack of these things. Tease it out from the bottom so you don't break it on the noise. Okay. And again, that one in. This is the time of the year when we're getting to the stage where we should have pruned what we had to prune. And we're now getting ready to maybe start off the planters and the borders and get a bit of veg in. Potatoes, I see my potatoes over there chitting, and I need to get them in during the week, so they'll go in, and things like that. So what happens is we run out of time. Do you ever notice that? It's all, you know, March is kind of God, I wish it was summer, I wish it was summer. And then suddenly it's summer and then you're on the back foot and you're trying desperately to get things weeded and things like that. So if you have borders or anything like that and you're feeding them a chicken manure, slow release fertilizer or something like that, then put it on something like a composted bark in order to suppress the weeds, keep the moisture in, and it looks really nice. It actually kind of sets it off. There's nothing more gorgeous than a border that's been nicely mulched and a lawn that's been edged and cut. Really, really gorgeous, you know. And it just kind of shows a bit of care and attention to your garden. And then you can sit down and relax if you have, you know, a moment or two. But I mean, this morning, for instance, the birds were going a bit mad at about, I think it was about 5:20, really early. So we're getting to that stage. And this weekend, the clock will go forward, which is really nice. You'll have the extra bit of time. Because, you know, just you run out of time in the evenings when you're trying to do a bit of gardening and just kind of, you know, just stay out that little bit longer. Just give me another hour, you know, and then you're called in to make the dinner or something like that. Okay, put a bit more in there. Move this around. So you can see kind of building up my colours and my look. Pinks and purples. You could use reds. You could use, you know, whatever takes your fancy. You use your colour combinations. This is kind of easy on the eye. There's no jarring. All the colours are kind of in a similar vein. Shove that in there. Now I'm being ruthless in that you could take a little bit more time and care putting these in, not to damage the roots or anything like that. Listen, plants are very robust. Their whole job in life is to succeed and produce seed. That's what they're you know, there to do. Now, really annoys me to buy ivy, but ivy gives a kind of a finished look to these planters. Of one kind of sticking out there. It gives a finished look to planters, and the trick is to make it look like it's been there for a while, not new. You know, that kind of way. It's like when they say to you, is that new, that outfit that you're wearing? You say, no, I've had it that years. So this is like, I've made this up and it's looking full and gorgeous. Okay, so we need to put in a bit of foliage from the garden. So I'm just going to put it in here and there. It's kind of a limey color, so it's going to give a little bit of a lift to the darkness of the purples. And just put it in the center there, in and around. Now you could put in a bit of oasis if you like, but if you're watering the compost, then these will be perfectly fine. This is a little bit of euonymus. Put it in there. And it just gives a little bit of a brightness to your planter. Okay, I will put in a bit of ivy as well, just to that I got the garden centre. But it does drive me mad. Enough ivy in the garden without going off buying it. Let's move that out of the way. And put that in the center there. So just, you see the lime gives a lift. Gives it a kind of a glow, if you like. Getting very technical now, glow. And again, you could have holly, you could have euonymus, you could have a bit of skimmia, whatever you have, you know, just put it in. And that'll give, and at Christmas, when I'm doing kind of planters at Christmas time with the cyclamen, just put in any hollies or any other foliage that you have, and that'll set off the cyclamens really nicely. It's kind of a florist trick. You just put in the foliage and it keeps. No big deal about it. Down in the center there. And it does give a nice kind of lift to it. Now, let's see. We just sowed a bit of grass seed there the other day, or yesterday. There was kind of a dip in part of the garden where we come through the gate. It's kind of like getting a bit low there, so we put a bit of topsoil on it and then sowed seed. I'm hoping for a decent amount of rain so it can germinate before the birds eat it all. I have a little bird feeder out here. We also have squirrels that come down and try their bestest to eat all the bird food. But I got one of these bird feeders that is squirrel proof. So you can watch them come down the tree and they hit it, they get to it and they can't get into it. It's great, you know, because they eat everything, you know, absolutely everything. We have rabbits as well. Rabbits sunbathe next door and they come into our garden and eat everything from the veg patch. Very little you can do. We've kind of fenced off what we can. There's kind of ditches running either side of our garden, so it's difficult to keep them out. But I suppose the trick is a bit for them, a bit for me, a bit for the birds, you know, so we're all happy. a few more of these fellas here and a bit of ivy. So with the ivy, obviously you get a decent bit of ivy, and I'm just going to move that over there because it'll all fall out. I just teased it apart. And all I'm going to do is little bits of it. You don't have to use the full thing, just little bits in and around, just to give your, and stick it in. Don't be afraid to stick it in. Ivy is very robust. It's not like, you know, there's very little harm you can do to ivy, let me tell you. It would root anywhere. Okay, so we're just putting it in and out so that our planter is going to look nice and full and finished. So if you are giving it as a present, it's nice to put in enough stuff, you know. It's like, you know, giving a really nice present to somebody for, well, be anything. Could have been Mother's Day, you know. Let's move this around and again to the front bit there. So again, this could be from your garden. It doesn't have to be bought ivy. We have enough of it in our ditches and grown up through the trees and stuff, so you just go out and harvest it. Any more there? Another little bit. Okay. It's just really to soften the edges. That's all I'm doing. Softening the edges and giving it a fuller kind of look. I might use another one. Yeah. So if you have any questions at the end, you know, I'll try my best to answer as many as I can. I'm a practical gardener in that I'm not a landscape designer. I'm a gardener. That's what I do. Get my hands mucky. Grow a lot of different types of things. Grow fruit, grow veg. You know, so it's a garden. You know, it's a family garden that we have here that we like to grow different things. We propagate a lot of plants. That's the nice thing about, you know, when I went to the Botanic Gardens after finishing modelling, well, you know, modelling gives you up, you don't give it up. You know, there comes a time where they kind of say, you know, pushing on a bit. So I had to think about what I really wanted to do down the road. And had I not kind of gone into the fashion business straight from kind of, you know, from school, if you like, I would have hopefully ended up doing what I'm doing now, because that was kind of my nan and granddad were really into their garden, and my dad loved it, although he's a bit of an armchair gardener now. I can assure you he prefers golf now, and he's 87 years of age. He can't wait to get back and do a bit of golf. So it's kind of, you know, I think I was meant to end up doing a bit of gardening. I always remember Mike Bunn, a really good photographer, wonderful photographer, and a great guy for beautiful landscape stuff as well. But he said to me, Mary, he said, put your hands in your pockets and don't take them out till your modelling career is finished. Because I obviously had shovels for hands, ready for horticulture, but not really for modelling. So I remember all of that kind of stuck in my brain. Now he didn't mean it. Well, I'm sorry he did actually. He used to love a model called Sharon Bacon. So Sharon did ballet, and she was, she just had a way of holding her hands where I didn't do ballet. I did Irish dancing with I didn't do anything like, there was a way you kind of posed. So anyway, yeah, keep your hands in your pockets and don't take them out till after your career is finished. Lovely, huh? So this is nearly there, my planter. Lots of nice roots on the ivy. So you can put the oasis in, and the ivy will certainly root into the oasis. I can tell you that would be perfectly fine in this. Just move it around. So don't forget remember I was talking to you about the coriander, and instead of just using the ordinary coriander, you can get your hands on one called Vietnamese coriander. Wonderful, absolutely gorgeous. If you're into cooking or anything like that, it's lovely. Really good flavour, and you're only harvesting a couple of leaves or 3 or 4 leaves of it. You're making something with it. Any more little spaces here. So you're just going around and filling gaps, if you like. Just filling a few gaps. I don't have one I made earlier, so you'll have to see this as it is. But within a week of a decent amount of a bit of heat on this and a decent amount of water, you will see a very different, very full looking planter that will look gorgeous and be really beautiful on a patio table. There's a little stand that you can get it's almost like a little metal stand. It just keeps this up off the ground, so it just gives it a little bit of elevation instead of being on the ground. But the great thing is, look, really light, so you're not breaking your back. It's not like terracotta. My dad actually offered to give me his golf trolley, you know, the battery powered one, so I could bring my pots to and from the glass house. He was getting rid of one of them. I thought that was ingenious, you know. So if you're ever looking for, or you're giving away a golf trolley, think again that you might be actually using it in the garden. So I'm just going to put this in here, and then I'm going to show you. Hopefully you won't be seeing all my mess. I have no doubt you can. But anyway, there you go. Ta-da! So nice. You know, you've got your purples and your pinks in the center of the osteosperums. You've got your purple, so that's picking up the other colors, and the lime from the euonymus or any foliage you happen to have in the garden would be lovely. So just use what you have, you know, spend your money on the flowers rather than the foliage, because we all have foliage in the garden. So if you have any questions, or you're dying to know about maybe how to prune, or what would be good in shade, or you're worried about anything that you have in the garden. Another problem that people seem to kind of worry about is hydrangeas. You know, when should I prune it? When should I not prune it? There's a couple of different types of hydrangea. You've got mop head, big robust heads on them, and they're more leathery looking leaves. Those fellas can get hit by frost even now. So they kind of hang on to their old seed heads. I can see some of the seed heads are blowing off at the minute. But generally speaking, you don't cut back. You're only going down to the first set of really good looking leaves, and then you're pruning because it prunes on wood it's made up to now. With the likes of Annabelle, Incredible, Limelight, you can prune back very hard because it's going to flower on wood it makes from now, or stems it makes from now. So that's, you know, that's the deal. They're the easier ones to look after, actually, the Limelight, Incredible, or Annabelle, because you can't make a mistake, you know, the kind of way. You cut it back and it will flower this year on the wood it makes. Whereas if you cut too severely a mop head hydrangea or a lace cap hydrangea, you're cutting away the flower ability. You're cutting out the stems that it's actually going to flower on. So just think about that when you're out there with your secateurs, thinking you're doing it right. The other thing with hydrangeas is they dry out quite fast. Last summer we had obviously a very good summer because we were all sitting in our gardens waiting for something to do, and plants were drying out. So be on it, or be aware that wind and, you know, that's what we're thinking, you know, we got a bit of rain, we didn't get enough rain. Some of the plants that you may have planted are dying already because they're not getting enough water. If you're putting in trees, or you put in trees from, you know, in the dormant season, November to February, make sure you're looking at them, making sure that they're watered regularly to give them a good start. There were trees in, you know, housing estates all over Ireland that were just drying out last year. Gone, finished. You know, what a shame for a tree, you know, that's newly planted, not to have enough water to keep going. Anyway, if you have any questions, ask away. But thank you very much. That was my second planter, and hopefully you will be able to do something similar. If you want, you can do something similar. But the edible salad bowl or grazing bowl is a nice one as well, and it looks the part, you know, with the violas. So if there's any questions, or you're interested in knowing a bit more about any of the plants that I put into the bowls, fire away. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mary. That was very interesting. I do have some questions in here for you. So we'll start with Rona Darcy has asked, I've tried to grow basil outside, but the slugs have a feast. Any suggestions, please?
Basil is a difficult one in that, first of all, it's kind of hard to grow because the leaves are so juicy and gorgeous, and obviously a meal, it's almost like inviting them in. So there's a basil called Basil Pluto. It's like a Greek basil, small little leaves, a bit like a marjoram or oregano, this tiny leaf. Packs the same punch, really, really nice scent of it. And equally as nice as the bigger leaf basil. So if you go for that one, I always put basil in with the tomatoes in the glasshouse to keep the aphids away. So it's well worth trying the Basil Pluto. I think you'll find it'll be a little less inviting, I don't know why, than the other stuff. So try that one, Basil Pluto.
Okay, we have another one here from Geraldine McDermott. How do you prune climbing roses?
Climbing roses. Okay, you're going to look for older stems. So the whole trick with climbing roses is there'll be a number of stems, filthy dirty already. There'll be a number of stems going up. So you're going to leave obviously one or two that are going to, you know, create that. If you're growing over an arch or indeed on a wall, you're going to look for the oldest stem, which tends to be a grayer or brown color. The more vigorous stems or the younger stems are a bright green, if you like. So you're going to take out one or two of the older stems every couple of years to allow the vigor to come back into the plant. So keeping your very green stems and taking out one or two of the older stems, and in that way it'll re-energize the plant from the base. I'll give you a kind of an idea of it. My mum and dad have a climbing rose in front of their house for, this will give away my age now, 9 years. Okay, and when they used to go away, I would go out and prune the hell out of it and really back to the bush, and it would flower better than ever that year because I'd really gone to town on it. What happens is they lose their vigor if they're allowed to get completely out of control. So look for the older stem and take that out and allow the newer, more vigorous stems to do their thing and flower really well. Give it a good feed as well.
And a similar question, I suppose, would that be the same for climbing hydrangea?
Climbing hydrangea is a little bit different in that they kind of, well, we have one in the front of the house called schizophragma, and it's a bit like climbing hydrangea, and it can get underneath the roof tiles and stuff like that. So just take those ones off, clean it up, get flowers kind of on wood it's making. So you have to kind of be ginger with pruning it back. But if it's going under the eaves or it's going under the roof tiles, you need to take it out. And it won't damage its flowering ability in other parts of it. You just take those, the flowering ability from the bits you've taken off, but leave some bits and take off the others that are going on. You know, they can get a bit out of hand. We have one that is on the front of the house that has now gone round to the north facing side of the house. And it won't flower as well, but it's a vigorous plant. So it needs to be tamed. So I would, encourage you to take it off anything that it's getting too vigorous underneath roof tiles or anything like that.
Okay, we've two people asking, I think, pretty much the same question here. The lime foliage you've added from your garden, does that wilt and die, i.e. is it just, does it have roots or is it just a cutting? It's
just a cutting. So if you put it into Oasis, I've just put it straight into the compost here. But if you put it into a bit of Oasis, as the rest of the bowl has been watered, the Oasis will take up water and keep that alive. And you might even have a happy accident where it actually roots in, you know. So in some instances, if it was fuchsia root today, but in some instances, the actual cutting that I've taken or the foliage that I've taken will root into the Oasis. It can happen with hydrangea. Actually, if you take a cutting of a hydrangea or as a flower, sometimes you can actually get roots on it. Or if you leave hydrangea flowers in water, they'll actually sprout roots.
Okay, we have a question here from Pat Healy. We have a Cornus crusa China girl that flowered brilliantly for the first year or two, but badly in the following years. Anything we can do to make it flower more consistently?
It can just depend on the plant. Usually a decent mulch and a feed, you know. I think people forget that even if they're in the ground for a long time, they can run out of nutrients. So give it a good feed, like you would do most shrubs and trees in the winter time. If it's a manure or something like that, just keep it away from the stem and allow it to be brought in by frost. So the manure breaks down with frost and stuff like that, and then the nutrients leach into the ground. So give it a feed. Generally speaking, if a plant, we have a cornice out here, and
water.
Yeah, and water. We have a cornice out here, and it has flowered prolifically, is the only way to say it, last year. It lost a stem, or one of the big stems, this year in the winter. Sometimes when a plant is under pressure from lack of water or lack of food, it won't flower as well. And sometimes if it's coming to the end, and you're saying your one isn't, it's a young kind of tree. if it's coming to the end of its life, it'll flower amazingly well, amazingly well. And you think, wow, look at that. And what's happening is it's actually trying to produce seed before it does its swan song. It's kind of going out. But with your one, I would give it a feed, a mulch, and keep it watered. Keep it watered. It was very dry last year, you know.
This might be similar. It's from Fiona Duffy. I have a magnolia tree planted in the garden over 20 years.
Yeah.
This year it has one flower only, and it has not flowered on previous years. Any reason why it is not flowering?
It's unusual unless it's under pressure somewhere. And I mean, if it's in the ground 20 years or so, they're long lived, you know. I would suggest, again, keep it watered and give it a good feed, mulch it, and have a look and see if there's any disease in the bark. Have a look down around the base of it and just see if there's any problem there. But generally speaking, magnolias flower because they're well fed and well watered. They do like a slightly acid soil. Years ago, you were allowed to go, well, you weren't allowed to go up the mountains and take a bit of acid soil and bring it back when you were planting a magnolia. They do like a slight acid. So it could be something to do with that as well. So just give it a feed and keep it well watered. And hopefully next year it'll do the trick, unless there is some, you know, problem in the soil, in the surrounding soil. It should kind of come back, hopefully. Yeah. Take a magnolia, you know, gorgeous.
Okay, we have a composter, and every year we are overrun by fruit flies. Any tips?
Yeah, that can be a problem with compost. Again, it's down to layering it up, keeping it a bit more watered than you would normally. So they thrive kind of on if you're putting in banana skins and fruit and stuff like that. They tend to you know, like that kind of environment. So if you don't let it dry out too much and keep it a bit more watered, you might have less fruit flies. It's just part of grass, yeah.
Throw grass out.
So we have a number of compost bays. One is for leaf mold, one is for kind of more twiggy stuff that we mulch. But if you have grass clippings, throw them in on top of it, and that could help the situation. So your grass clippings will certainly help with the fruit flies.
Okay, I think that seems to be, there's no more questions at the moment. So just leaves me to thank you very, very much for an excellent show and tell and presentation. Thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Thank you very much, and thank you all for inviting me into your living rooms.